Yeah, EMP is a partner of ours. They got, always I'd say invest in the team first before a protocol because, especially with senior ridge protocols, because there's so many around. So Horde also, I think they're doing some fantastic stuff over at Horde. And I think, they've got a great reputation within the space as well. Dex also, huge fan of Dex actually. And I haven't watched them closely recently, but I know that they certainly had some success. So yeah, interesting. So what's so you've caused a bit of a stir within the community today. You've definitely made an impression. So what, maybe just to where did you hear about MDB and how long have you known about us? Because I've seen your username before, actually. I've definitely seen you, whether it's in the community or around the DeFi space. So I don't think this is your first interaction with MDB. Is that right?
I was originally interested in MDB Plus. So I came in and I got all my questions answered about MDB Plus. I saw the similarities between XUSD. Then I read the white paper and got a better understanding. Like, okay, I understand the relationship now. And I think MDB Plus is a phenomenally solid model. So I was really excited about it. But I didn't really have a motivation to learn about MDB until someone in one of the Telegram chats I'm like a contributor to, but I'm not an admin. Someone was like, there's this project, MDB. It seems like the kind of project that you and another one of my buddies who does dashboards, he's like a big stat guy like me. He basically tagged both of us and was like, this seems like a project that the two of you guys would traditionally be interested in based on your buy box. And I was like, I don't know. So then I put a little chart.
Mike,
and I was like, oh.
Were you an investor in Vault?
You said what?
Were you an investor in Vault DeFi?
I don't know. I think I'd have vaguely heard of Vault, but to tell you the truth, I could tell you nothing about it. No, not really, no.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. Yeah, and so I think why didn't we? Because I think there was a hot topic that I think you were trying to maybe get your head around, and maybe there was some sometimes you can look at the same thing two people, and one person sees it as a 6 and a 9. So you were asking about the LP tokens within the multi-sig. What was your question there?
Well, I mean, more so like let me see if I can get my iPad out. Because I just was going, because what do I do? So I like to look at, okay, so the protocol says, okay, we have 500% backing. I'm like, okay, that's great. Trust but verify. So I'm like, okay, so let's see what qualifies as 500% backing. So when I'm looking at the backing, I'm trying to understand like how much of this particular, how much of the funds, if there was a scenario where let's say the value of MDB was to go up significantly, which I think it will because of tokenomics, then people will start to sell. Now, the idea that I kind of understand about the protocol is that the protocol is going to use the trust fund to basically inject capital into the liquidity pool to make sure these sales don't wreck the price. So then I'm like, okay, well, how much capital would really be deployed if there was like a doomsday scenario where like there was a lot of selling, like if maybe the top 4 sellers sold. And so I'm like, well, traditionally, like I just don't see any value in you guys selling those $163,000 in MDB tokens to support the pool because you can't extract that value. So then I'm like, okay, well, you have a bunch of LPs.
Yeah.
Also,
so Mike, so let me just understand. Because you mentioned, can you hear me, Mike?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned LP tokens. There's many different LP tokens within our multi-sig. Yeah, because we own LPs across all different profiles. So you were specifically referring to the MDB BNB LP?
Yeah, so I would assume, let me actually pull it up because I know about memory. So you got the MDB Plus LP, you got the MDB you got the MDB BNB LP. So I mean that's like the core liquidity there. So I mean I wouldn't think that you would like unless someone was to disclose that to me, I would assume that liquidity wouldn't be touched. But the LP tokens that you have by other protocols.
Yeah. So what you're referring to then is not LP, if I'm right. What you're referring to is the MDB tokens that we hold in the trust fund, right?
Well, I mean, I'm asking about both because I mean, you have a considerable amount of LP tokens that I assume won't be used as defense to defend the liquidity pool. So I'm like, okay, well, what is the actual sellable assets? Like, what would you really liquidate? Like, you'll liquidate the BNB, you'll liquidate the MDB plus, you'll liquidate XYZ. So I'm literally making a list in Excel of all the potential things that could be liquidated, and I want to see what that number adds up to. Because there are certain things that you're just not going to liquidate. Like, why would you pull the LP? If the price is going down, like that doesn't help anybody.
Maybe I can help you a little bit. So you will see a delta between the two because we have some investments are off chain. So we have 6-figure investment in yield nodes. We've got $180,000 investment in Freeway. So both of those investments are off chain. We have investments in other wallets. So EMP, we invested over $100,000. It's now worth a bit more in EMP. That's also in a different wallet for operational reasons. We have our Sphere tokens, because of the transfer tax is quite punitive within Sphere, are also sat within a different wallet. We also have a range of stable assets and a different operational wallet as well. So there is other assets which the team understands all of so I understand why you would see a delta, but there's significantly more assets sat in other wallets rather than just in that one single wallet. So maybe put simply, maybe that answers your question. In terms of the MDB tokens themselves, actually, they, like any protocol, doesn't want to accumulate lots of its own token, right? Because it's fundamentally you could classify it as illiquid. However, we don't generate our own tokens, and actually the way our protocol acquires tokens, the vast majority of tokens that the protocol has to acquire, it actually buys, and we buy them strategically. And when we buy them strategically, we are actually swapping. Say BNB, for instance, and BNB are the same, right? BNB isn't 100% backed by cash. BNB is probably less backed by cash than MDB is actually. But we buy tactically, so we're swapping something like BNB for MDB to store a very tactical amount. And I could probably point to a very specific example. So we bought around about $20,000 about 48 hours ago, despite us having MDB. And that's because we don't want to give up that MDB. It's actually starting to get quite low, and we've got a few things that are coming up. So we've got like Gravity Project, where we adopt another project. We have to then compensate the holders. So the MDB holding you see there isn't us, holding on to something and saying, hey, look, we've got value that we don't really have. That's us tactically trading something for MDB as part of our strategy, because of the deflationary nature of the protocol. Actually, quite often, it's a very clever strategy of ours to procure our own supply if we strategically know that it might be needed in 4, 5, 6 weeks, and we also know what's coming up, and we also have a good feel for maybe things around the corner that are going to create a lot of buy pressure and a lot of pump on the chart. So it's that balance is a very tactical holding.
Okay, yeah, I think what you guys are doing with MDB, like the token and the general tokenomics of kind of like acquiring the token, using the fees to burn it, and just the whole concept of being fixed asset with deflationary. I mean, the model, solid model. So I mean, it's just a liquidity pool is very hard to manage, and I've seen a lot of different approaches to people attempting to build their own mechanisms that they believe will be able to scale with the growth of the liquidity pool and be able to manage and keep, the liquidity pool in balance enough to where investors are happy with the growth. So, I mean, I've definitely seen a lot of different approaches. I feel like I'm almost like a studier, like an oracle of this information. Like I'm just going to every single person that has an idea on how they want to solve the same problem, and I'm just getting all their takes, and I'm just lining them all up in Excel spreadsheets, and I'm making my little investments in each one of them. And that's my approach. Somebody's gonna get it right.
Yeah. Well,
I think we're getting in that direction. So it's my approach. So that's kind of why I have this that's why I asked a lot of questions, and I'm really like trying to audit, like, well, what will actually happen? because I have seen scenarios. I'm not trying to say that it'll happen to your protocol, but I have seen scenarios where there have been like, like a trust fund that was kind of like their design to support the price. But when the whales came in, the protocol just kept deploying funds and kept deploying funds. And eventually we saw those treasuries just drain and drain and drain. So,
have you looked at our chart since launch?
You said what?
Have you looked at our chart? Have you looked at
Yeah, I
our
have looked at the
chart
chart.
daily since launch?
I've studied the growth. I understand also that it's very early. And I do think that, I mean, it doesn't matter, I think, but it looks great. The product looks great. And mathematically, this thing is gonna go much higher. I'm just doing my audit.
That's the plan.
So,
But so the reason I mentioned the chart, Mike, because if you look, there's two very distinct dips in the chart. One of those was when we had the Terra Luna scandal, and then the other one was the next crash around Celsius. And the reason I point to those is because you'll see that on both occasions we dipped ever so slightly under our pre-sale price. What we didn't do was tip our trust fund into the protocol. We did tactically buy supply whilst it's cheap, which is why we've managed to burn $1.6 million worth of our supply in only 4 months. But what we didn't do is kind of chase ego over mathematics, and we were patient. And then we've built other things on top of that. In terms of your question around liquidity, it's a fair question as well. I think remember, if we did see a 50% crash, it would mean that the LP had been drained 50%. Now, by the way, our white paper maybe comes across like we're saying we're 5 times backed, when our objective isn't to be 5 times backed at all times, actually. In truth, a little bit of a secret most people don't know, the protocol was originally designed to be 4 times backed at launch. And we decided to make it 5 times back just to add an additional safety buffer. And we designed the mathematics around 4 times. And it's meant to be at launch. Now, remember, if the LP was drained 50%, i.e., we're actually draining the LP 50% would take the price down about 70%. Then what you would see is that the backing would be extremely high at that point. It'd be way more than 5 times backed. It'd be really, really extreme. But we do also have Xenia, so you'll see our LP tokens within the multi-sig.
Jump back to that last topic. Can we jump back to that last topic?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, I just want to make sure I absorb it properly. Now, you said if there was a huge sell and the price dropped 70%, because of the sale taxes, that would funnel into the trust fund and it would increase the value of the trust fund, as well as the fact that huge sell would decrease the overall value of the liquidity pool. So it would create this relatively large spread. Is that what you're referencing?
I'm not sure what you mean specifically by spread, but you would
difference
see,
because you do a 500%, and then the liquidity pool from all the sales would drop in value because of the token price drop. So then you'd be at higher than 500%.
Exactly. And perversely, at the same time, the trust fund is also healthier because it's gained a lot of capital from all of the sell-offs. So the trust fund the backing is actually going up whilst the LP is coming down. Therefore, the ratio becomes even more extreme at that point, acting as a safety net. Now, the interesting thing is that humans are humans and they understand this, right? There's many people that wish they acted on it much more, maybe 6 or 7 weeks ago. But I don't think you'd see it happen for a third time. So actually, I think if we saw a 50% price crash, I know actually, it's not I think, there's many investors that would try and accumulate that supply before the trust fund did itself, actually. And then, the Phoenix accumulates that supply and then burns it, or burns the vast majority unless tactically required for other things that create value in other ways. So that's the design of the system. That's how it works. I just wanted to touch on the liquidity, though, because people compare liquidity on Xenia, which then also adds a much deeper liquidity stack than the protocol owns itself. So the LP tokens that you see within the multi-sig. So there is also that factor there that adds another layer of liquidity depth beyond what the protocol owns.
And you're talking about the retail holders, right? In
Yes.
Xenia? Yeah, I really, in my calculations, the retail holders, I can bring up some graphs if needed. When the price goes down, they're the first ones to pull liquidity. and they actually exacerbate the price drop. So really, the diamond hands are the protocol. The retail investors do not have a strong historical record in any project holding on to LP tokens when the price is dropping. Historical data.
Do you know the fastest way for us to times 10 our price?
So what?
The fastest way for us to times 10 our price?
I haven't done all the math around the protocol, but yeah, please go ahead and let me know.
Is to see a massive crash. That's the fastest way, is to see a massive crash, and it would also be sustainable. If you know, let me when the price was at its lowest, at one or 2 points, the actual circulating supply or circulating market cap, if you put a value on it, was backed around 75-80% at one point. So if you saw a 90% crash in our protocol, which isn't it's actually quite a common occurrence in DeFi to see something crash 90%. If you saw that in our protocol, you would, the growth curve as a result of that crash would be even steeper than it would be mathematically without the crash.
So you're saying that, okay, so price drops, price crashes, which means that a lot of MDB tokens were put into the liquidity pool, and a lot of BNB was taken out of the liquidity pool. So now you have a lot more MDB tokens in the liquidity pool, but also you have fees that have been accumulated from those sellers that's now in a cash position in the trust fund. And the next step will be the trust fund recycling that cash back into the liquidity pool to attempt to buy back and burn enough to bring the price back to. And would you try to restore it completely? I mean, where's the logic?
So I think the burning doesn't change price. You know that, right?
Yeah. Only taking tokens out of the liquidity pool, but I don't know why you buy back and burn. I mean, you could just stick it in another wallet and just redistribute those. But I mean, that's how you handle your protocol. I mean, I don't know. I always look at the liquidity pool. That's really
if you just gave the cash out, then the cash would be shared out between the same amount of tokens, as your supply wouldn't come down. Think about the analogy of there's a group of people in a room, and there's a pot of money in the room. That pot of money is shared out between the people in the room. Every person in the room represents a token. If we keep reducing the number of people in the room and increasing the pot of money, now if there was a massive crash, then okay, the price might go really low, but actually the pot of money in the room could buy up a lot of the tickets to be in that room, meaning that the pot that is in the room is now worth more per person of what's left. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So the burn wallet is just to create, like a deflationary aspect on supply, so that everyone who's holding alone, you'll grow your share because there are just a certain number of tokens that are leaving circulation always.
So if we use round numbers, if the trust fund bought 1 million tokens now out of the liquidity pool, which to be fair would pump the price, but to use a round number, say for instance that cost $13,000, that's $13,000 of BNB now in the pool, and 1 million MDB tokens that will never go back in the pool because they can't, because they're burnt. It isn't a wallet, by the way. We use a proper dead address. There's no way of ever accessing it. If you go to BSC scan, you'll see our circulating supply actually reduces, rather than it being, we've got 10% in a burn wallet and you just watch the wallet.
Yeah, I was looking at the wallets. I mean, that's like a whole nother conversation. I still wanted to kind of go through, these kind of like the treasuries and whatnot, just so I have a clear understanding. And then I guess, I don't know, we'll see. My wife possibly needs me. Gotta go to lunch.
Yeah, no problem.
Right.
Well, Mike,
I'm holding a baby right now, so I guess let me just try to be real efficient with my questions. Okay.
Sure.
So I'm looking right now, and I'm looking at these positions, and like, for example, okay, so I do have a graph. I understand. Okay, so we have funds at Freeway. I haven't memorized them, but they're all in my notes. Then you have funds at Yield Nodes as well. Then there's a secondary wallet here. Let me take a look at this. So So now you said you said $90,000 in EMP.
I couldn't tell you the exact number off the top of my head, but it's around six figures. Yeah.
Okay, because I was given a wallet address by a member of the community. I was given two wallet addresses. So one wallet address has MDB Plus staked for $46,000. So I assume is not going to be liquidated if there is a point where the price needs to be defended due to a sell-off. In the same wallet,
MDB Plus staked.
Yeah, it's staked. It's $46,000 staked.
You mean MDB BNB farm?
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. Sorry. MDB BNB. That's staked. It's like 46,000. It's earned about like $305. So I would assume that wouldn't get sold. But then there's also EMP here in this particular wallet. But it's not a lot of EMP. It's like $2,200.
No, that's just a bit of E-share. That's just a little bit of E-share.
Yeah, it's not really folding. And then I see 13,000 in Spear, and then another 20,000 in MDB Plus. So this 20,000 in MDB Plus, would there be a scenario if it needed to be used as defense for the liquidity pool? Would this be sold? The MDB Plus in this particular wallet?
Yeah, everything that's in the I think the particular wallet you're talking about is probably the marketing operations wallet. But everything,
Okay, so it's got a different purpose. It's got a different purpose, you're saying? So I shouldn't be looking at this, right?
Yeah, but we, talking doomsday scenarios, we would, paying some lunatic to talk about us and not create any exposure for the project, or maybe buying up and burning some of our supply. We'd definitely choose the latter.
Okay, all right. That answers my question. Okay, so and then let me go to the next wallet. So then I see you have this BSW BNB staked as well at BuySwap at about 66,000. So that will get liquidated as well. Correct?
Our BuySwap farms are trust fund allocations, yeah.
So, because I
what's the end of that wallet address that you've seen the BuySwap tokens?
The end of the wallet address B8 C6.
Yeah, that's the multi-sig.
Yeah. So I get the
LP in there.
So now the thing that I feel like the community was trying to press upon me was, hey, these farm positions are for yield. So we're looking at how much money we're making from the farms, and we're taking that yield and we're going to use that under healthy conditions to support the price. And I'm like, yeah, I get that. But I guess it's not that clear to the community I got that, because I'm asking these questions. But what we understand in this conversation, I'm asking more about more aggressive scenarios where, like, what would really, if you really, really had to go all out and defend, what really gets liquidated? So back to this. Okay, so it's good to know that these funds is liquidated. So now, then I answer my question for really a lot of these assets. So you got another 113 in MDB, 113,000 in MDB in this wallet, MDB Plus. So the MDB Plus would be sold. The MDB would not be sold. 85,000 in BUSD, 61,000 in BNB, XUSD, more BNB. So you're all and then so now, then you have about $1 million in LP tokens, and that's MDB Plus, MDB BNB, and then MDB Plus BNB. And these are not staked. They're just $1 million sitting there in liquidity on PancakeSwap. So these, do you do anything with these liquidity pools? Are you progressively adding liquidity? Do you remove liquidity, or are they just going to just kind of like sit here and just kind of, I don't know. I just kind of want to understand how this liquidity is managed, and also confirm that this isn't something that will be sold to defend the price, because I just don't see any value in doing that. I guess you could stash the MDB and then just sell the BNB side, but then out the liquidity, it never works.
Well, I think you'd be adding to the problem if you did that with your own LP. But so of the three pairs that you talk about, so MDB plus MDB is 40% of our LP is backed by MDB plus. So that's what you're looking at. The MDB BNB. Actually, you see some of it there. Some of it we do actually have it staked on Xenia, and the rewards we're burning. We've got some to burn very soon, actually. But so two of the three are LP. The only way those LP changes is for two reasons. We can shift the percentages. 100% BNB backed, and we shifted to 60% BNB backed. If we saw probably BNB maybe around about the 330, 340 price, we would probably start to shift a higher percentage across from BNB to MDB plus backed to try and hedge and hold some of that gain. We do, if we burnt 90% of our supply, then actually the LP would be ridiculously high percentage, and that also creates some issues. So we do have the ability to adjust LP sort of tactically, but it's something that we choose to do to support the health of the protocol. But it's not, it's certainly not a source of funds. The third LP that you see actually just acts as a utility and is a trust fund investment. So the MDB plus BNB pair is just so that you can have a chart on PCS for MDB plus, because it doesn't actually need to be on an exchange. You can buy and sell it just through the contract itself, or the BUSD is locked in the contract. So that MDB plus BNB is actually trust fund money that is just used because people like to see a chart on a DEX. And we'll do something similar with Phoenix.
Wonderful information you shared there. I have my own theories about it, and I actually was going to ask about it. I kind of thought maybe it might have been there for arbitrage, but it makes a lot of sense that it's there for just being able to create a chart. Because another thing, when I saw the liquidity pool, I was
and we do arbitrage, by the way. We do arbitrage. Yeah. If you look at a multi-sig, you'll see BNB coming into it many times a day in very small sums. That's the arbitrage between the MDB plus contract and the MDB plus pair. And you'll also see in the marketing ops wallet, the one that's got the small amount of E-share in it, you'll also see XUSD coming in there, because the ARB is run by the guys there and they pay us in XUSD. And you'll see that we just take that XUSD periodically and we invest it into the MDB token.
That's a really interesting system. Yeah, as soon as I saw that, I was like, it's just a great opportunity for arbitrage, because you always have that guaranteed redemption price. So it's just automatic money every time that pool gets out of balance.
Right.
So
yeah, exactly. So, yeah. And we make about $3,500 a month on arbitrage, and then just invest it back into the protocol just as another passive income.
Those are good stats. I like the stats. Thank you very much. Just going in the notes. All right.
Any other questions, Mike, before you need to head off for lunch?
Yeah, because you probably hear baby now. It's more aggressive. Let's see. So now I do see you have this BNB, BUSD, and you have this cake BNB. Now I'm assuming I'm assuming those funds, those LPs, they're staked in farming, earning cake. If there was a scenario, those would get sold too, correct?
1,000,000%. Yeah, it's
there
rather than be static.
Okay. And okay, so that pretty much answers my question. I mean, that allows me to go back and get with Excel, and then I can kind of make my own assumptions from there. But yeah, I mean, this really was very thorough. So I appreciate your time.
Yeah, no, thank you. I appreciate you asking the questions, Mike. And look, I think the community, to speak on behalf of them, it's we've been through some stuff, right? We launched a week before the biggest crash for years, and we've definitely got some battle scars, but we've also got some stripes on our shoulders that we've earned, and so therefore, the protocol has been good to its holders, and the holders have been good to the protocol. So there's a big emotional bond there. So if somebody comes in and it's a bit like saying somebody's baby's ugly, then they're going to be a little bit emotional, and so I'm sure you understand where that comes from.
I understand completely. I completely understand what it must be like to be in the chat and for me to show up with 75 questions, and they're all very granular, and I'll just keep asking them, and I don't get offended. So you really can't turn me down or turn me off. I'm just like the Terminator. So yeah, it's extremely disruptive for chats. Most of the time, they just tell me to leave, and I just come back, and then I ask a few more questions in like a week, and then I kind of come back. I mean, I got receipts for all kind of chats that I've been in where I got hundreds of messages, and you can see these huge blocks. Even EMP couldn't, like, I went to EMP the first time, I got kicked out twice. It was just too much. You know, it was too much. You know, so then I came in the third time, and then I talked with AJ for a little bit, and you know, then I was able to really get some questions answered. I still have a bunch of questions about EMP and their treasury system that is not answered, but I ain't here to FUD. I like EMP, but it's still a lot of unanswered questions. So that's why I'm like so thorough and like auditing your, you know, treasury system, because not everybody is this transparent. They're not really going to just answer my question like, okay, what's the purpose of this? What's the purpose of that? Well, if this happens, then how much of this is going to get used? I mean, it's just a lot. I totally get it. And, you know, people call me a troll. They say what they want to say. Teflon, baby. Teflon. So it doesn't matter to me. I got to make money. I'm not here about making friends. I'm here to make money. So I'm just going to get the information and get the truth. And I'm not going to let anything offend me. Because it's not personal. People are very tribal. They believe in the projects. They probably do legitimately think I pose a threat. I do not. I bring more value than
I'm sure after hearing you talk, that I'm sure they'll be comfortable that you're harmless and you're just trying to learn.
Yeah, I kind of think that would be the case too. All right. Well, yeah. Again, thank you very, very, very much for your time. I also thank my wife for giving me this moment to, you know, make this call while I'm supposed to be getting ready to go out and meet with my brother-in-law. So again, thank you for your time. Thank you, community, for waking up the Godfather and getting us on a call together. And
brilliant. No, it's good to have an impromptu AMA. And Mike, I look forward to your big green candle.
Yes. Thank you very much. And maybe my friends too. Maybe my friends too. Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Cheers, buddy. Take care.
Cheers.